The acrid stench of corruption hung over Lake Vista like morning fog. Donna Wellington, HOA president and suburban dictator, had just made the biggest mistake of her criminal career. She had tried to extort $40,000 from a man she assumed was just another helpless homeowner. But stay tuned, because when Detective Daniel Rivera finally shows his badge, the look of pure terror on her face will make your jaw drop. Here is exactly what happens when corrupt HOA officials try to run their extortion racket on the wrong person. I am about to walk you through the most satisfying takedown of a power-hungry HOA Karen and her dirty cop husband that you have ever seen. We are talking federal charges, prison sentences, and an entire community finally breaking free from years of systematic theft. But first, let me paint you the picture of just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Detective Daniel Rivera had earned his lakefront retirement. 25 years with the state police, countless investigations, and a spotless record had finally paid off. The house at Lake Vista seemed perfect. Peaceful water views, quiet neighborhood, and what appeared to be a well-maintained community. That illusion shattered the moment Donna Wellington knocked on his door. Picture this woman. Designer athleisure head to toe. Spray tint so thick it looked like armor. And the kind of manufactured smile that screams, "I am about to ruin your day." Behind her stood her husband Blake, sheriff's uniform pressed to military precision, hand resting on his duty weapon like some kind of suburban warlord. "Mr. Rivera," Donna announced, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "We need to discuss your community integration fees." Here is where the beautiful insanity begins. Daniel, still unpacking boxes, listened as Donna rattled off a list of charges that would make a Vegas casino blush. Landscaping compliance assessment, architectural review premium, community enhancement surcharge, and my personal favorite, the neighborhood harmony facilitation fee. Total damage? $40,000. But here's the part that will make your blood boil. When Daniel asked to see the official HOA documents authorizing these fees, Donna's response was pure criminal arrogance. "Honey, I am the HOA. Why say goes? Pay up, or we make your life very uncomfortable." The metallic click of Blake's handcuffs jingling on his belt punctuated her threat like a period at the end of a death sentence. Now, most people would have crumbled right there. Faced with a corrupt sheriff and his power-hungry wife, what choice do you have? But remember, Daniel Rivera was not most people. And what happens next will show you exactly why you should never judge a book by its cover. Because Donna Wellington had just declared war on someone who had spent decades taking down criminals far more sophisticated than her. When Daniel refused to pay, the Wellington war machine kicked into high gear. It started subtle. Parking tickets on his car despite being parked legally in his own driveway. Noise complaints filed at 3 in the morning when Daniel was sound asleep. Building code violations for a perfectly maintained property. But then it escalated. Someone spray-painted "comply or leave" across his garage door in blood-red letters. His mailbox was found bashed in with a baseball bat. Mail scattered across the street like confetti. The beautiful part? Every incident happened to occur during Blake's patrol shifts, yet somehow no perpetrator was ever found. Here is what Daniel discovered through casual conversation with his neighbors. This was not random harassment. This was a systematic operation. Martha Chen, the elderly widow next door, whispered over her fence about similar demands. $15,000 for her small lot adjustment fee. When she could not pay, mysterious water leaks started appearing in her basement during Blake's patrol hours. The Johnsons, 3 houses down. $25,000 for structural compliance assessment. When they questioned the validity, the teenager's son started getting pulled over every single day for random traffic stops. But the most chilling revelation came from Tom Bradley, the retired teacher across the street. He had tried to organize a legal challenge to the fees 2 years earlier. 1 week later, his wife was arrested on fabricated drug possession charges. The evidence mysteriously disappeared before trial, but the message was crystal clear. Pay up or suffer the consequences. What would you do if your local sheriff was running a protection racket right out in the open? Where do you go for help when the people sworn to protect you are the ones doing the robbing. The residents of Lake Vista faced this nightmare every single day, trapped between financial ruin and systematic persecution. But Daniel Rivera had not survived 25 years in law enforcement by backing down from bullies. While the Wellingtons thought they were intimidating another helpless victim, Daniel was doing what he did best: investigating. That first week, he installed security cameras around his property. Not the cheap consumer garbage from the hardware store, but professional-grade surveillance equipment that could capture license plates from 2 blocks away. Every incident, every threatening visit, every act of vandalism was now being recorded in high definition. The next move was pure investigative genius. Daniel started documenting every financial demand the HOA had made over the past 5 years. Property records, bank statements, construction permits, the works. What he discovered would make your head spin. The Lake Vista HOA had collected over $2 million in unauthorized fees over the past 3 years. But here is the kicker. The community had received exactly $0 in actual improvements. No new amenities, no maintenance projects, no infrastructure upgrades. The money had simply vanished into private accounts. Meanwhile, the harassment intensified. Blake started conducting welfare checks at Daniel's house at 2 in the morning, shining flashlights through windows and demanding entry. Donna began filing daily complaints with the city about everything from his lawn height to his garbage placement. The beautiful irony: every aggressive action they took was being meticulously documented by a man who had built his career on building airtight criminal cases. Now here's where this story takes a turn that will give you chills. Because after 3 weeks of harassment, intimidation, and outright criminal behavior, Donna Wellington made the fatal mistake of escalating to physical threats. And that is when Daniel Rivera decided it was time to show these suburban criminals exactly who they had been messing with. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday morning. Daniel was watering his front lawn when Donna marched across the street, Blake trailing behind like a loyal attack dog. "Last warning, Rivera," she snarled, clipboard brandished like a sword. "Pay the fees, or we start seizure proceedings on your property." The sheer audacity was breathtaking. They were now threatening to steal his house through fabricated legal action. "And if you try to fight this in court," Blake added, hand hovering over his service weapon, I guarantee you will regret it. I have friends in every courthouse in this county." That was the moment Daniel Rivera smiled for the first time in weeks. "Funny you should mention friends in courthouses," he said, reaching slowly into his back pocket, "because I have quite a few myself." The leather wallet opened with a soft snap that somehow sounded like thunder. Inside, gleaming under the morning sun, was a state police detective badge that had seen 25 years of service. Detective Daniel Rivera, State Police Criminal Investigations Division, recently retired, but still very much connected. The color drained from Blake's face like someone had pulled a plug. Donna's clipboard clattered to the pavement, scattering fake violation notices like autumn leaves. "Now," Daniel continued, his voice taking on the calm authority of someone who had arrested murderers and drug kingpins, "would you like to explain to me exactly how this extortion and racketeering operation works? Because I have been documenting everything for the past month, and I am very curious to hear your side of the story." Blake's hand moved away from his weapon so fast he nearly dislocated his shoulder. Donna started backing toward the street, her spray-tanned face now the color of wet concrete. "This is not over," she stammered, but the threats sounded hollow now, pathetic. "Oh, but it is," Daniel replied. "It absolutely is." Word traveled fast through Lake Vista. By that evening, Daniel's doorbell was ringing constantly. Neighbors who had been terrorized into silence for years suddenly found their courage. Martha Chen arrived first, carrying a shoebox full of documents. Fake violation notices, threatening letters, even recordings she had made of Donna's extortion demands. "I knew this was wrong," she whispered, "but I was so scared." The Johnsons brought bank statements showing the $25,000 they had been forced to pay. Tom Bradley had copies of every legal document from his wife's fabricated arrest. One by one, the entire neighborhood unburdened themselves of years of systematic abuse. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Rebecca Martinez, the HOA treasurer, knocked on Daniel's door at midnight, tears streaming down her face. "I kept copies of everything," she sobbed. "Bank records, payment transfers, private account statements. I knew it was wrong, but they threatened my family." The documents she handed over were pure prosecutorial gold. Wire transfers to personal accounts, forged approval signatures, fabricated expense reports. Everything needed to prove a federal conspiracy charge. By the end of that week, Daniel had assembled a criminal case that would make federal prosecutors weep with joy. But the beautiful part of this story is not just about one corrupt couple getting what they deserved. It is about an entire community finding the strength to stand up to their oppressors. And what happened next sent shockwaves through every corrupt HOA in the state. The arrests happened simultaneously at dawn on a Friday morning. Daniel had coordinated with his former colleagues in the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, and they executed the operation with military precision. Blake Wellington was pulled over during his morning patrol, handcuffed in front of 3 squad cars, and perp walked past his own sheriff's department. The body cam footage would later go viral on social media. Donna was arrested at her favorite yoga studio. Designer athleisure replaced with standard issue orange jumpsuit. The look of absolute shock on her face as federal agents read her rights was priceless. The charges were devastating. Conspiracy to commit extortion, racketeering, civil rights violations under color of authority, mail fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. Combined, they were looking at decades in federal prison. But here's the part that will restore your faith in justice. The community that had been terrorized for years finally got to watch their oppressors face consequences. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Neighbor after neighbor testified about years of systematic abuse, financial extortion, and harassment. The evidence Daniel had gathered was so overwhelming that both defendants pleaded guilty rather than face a jury. Blake Wellington was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His law enforcement pension was revoked, and he was banned from ever working in law enforcement again. Donna received 8 years and was ordered to pay full restitution to every victim. The designer athleisure was replaced with a prison uniform that matched her new accommodations. Lake Vista underwent a complete transformation. The community elected a new HOA board committed to transparency and actual community improvement. The $2 million in stolen funds was recovered and used for genuine neighborhood enhancements. Property values increased by 30% within 6 months. Families who had been planning to move away suddenly decided to stay. Children played in the streets again without fear of harassment from corrupt authorities. Daniel Rivera became something of a local legend, the retired detective who had taken down the suburban crime syndicate. But he preferred to think of himself as just a neighbor who refused to be pushed around. But here's where this story takes an unexpected turn. The arrests of Blake and Donna Wellington sent shockwaves through a network of corrupt HOA officials across 3 states. Within weeks of their sentencing, Daniel started receiving anonymous phone calls, threatening messages left on his car, strange vehicles parked outside his house at odd hours. It turned out that the Wellingtons were not operating alone. They were part of a larger conspiracy involving dozens of HOA boards, corrupt contractors, and compromised local officials. And Daniel Rivera, the retired detective who just wanted a peaceful lakefront retirement, had accidentally declared war on organized crime. The phone rang at 3 in the morning, exactly 1 week after the sentencing. Daniel answered on the second ring, instantly alert. "You think you won?" The voice was electronically distorted, impossible to identify. "You have no idea how deep this goes. Back off, or join the Wellingtons in prison." Daniel Rivera smiled in the darkness of his bedroom. After 25 years of taking down criminals, he recognized a challenge when he heard one. "Bring it on," he whispered into the phone. The war against HOA corruption was far from over, but the battle for Lake Vista had been decisively won. One retired detective, armed with nothing but documentation, determination, and a badge that still commanded respect, had taken down a criminal enterprise that had terrorized an entire community for years. The lesson here is crystal clear. Document everything, know your rights, And never underestimate the power of one person willing to stand up to bullies, no matter how much authority they think they have. What would you do if your HOA tried to extort $40,000 from you? Would you pay up and hope for the best? Or would you fight back like Detective Rivera? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. And if you want to hear what happened when that criminal network tried to retaliate against Daniel, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because the story of the Lake Vista detective is far from over, and the next chapter involves federal task forces, interstate crime syndicates, and a conspiracy that goes all the way to the top. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next.